of Ask an Expert, and I am joined here by the wonderful Sinead Maynard. And honestly, I feel like I should not be interviewing you, Sinead. You are the pro interviewer here. This feels very wrong. I'm a total amateur in comparison, but I appreciate you joining us this evening to talk about the Maryland 5-star and the Maryland 3-star that happened this past weekend.
I am happy to be here. I'm so relaxed because I didn't have to do any preparation. I know you very well, and so I don't have to get to know who I'm talking to. You have to ask all the questions. I can just, YOLO.
That's
I'm
great.
pumped.
YOLO is right. That is the right, mindset to go into this with, and, we've got some great questions here, and I am excited to dive into this with you because, Sinead, one thing I kinda wanted to start with is I don't believe we've had you on Ask an Expert since you've really become, like, a major voice in sports commentating for the eventing world, and I wanted to start there. Like, when did that happen where you did become you're like one of the main broadcasters at our big events around the country. When did that happen? What's that like? How are you enjoying that? Kind of give us the whole lowdown.
I don't know. I honestly don't know how and when that happened. I think it's like one of those things that's gradually kind of progressed over the last 10 years. It's funny, I saw like John Kyle posted a picture of 10 years ago with me at like sitting in the booth with him at Kentucky. And I used to just sit in on cross country day for like a block of time with John Kyle at Kentucky because the riders would always go in and kind of fill the day with him. There was not normally an ant like it's evolved so much since then in the last 10 years, but and then John and I just really got along. And now I know that, some people go in there and they get really timid, or some people, speak really quietly or whatever. And John and I just hit it off. And so each year when I would go back, I maybe get one extra block, or, I a lot of times I was riding. So it was great because I could pass the time in there and watch some of the course. And then I think one year I was going and I wasn't riding, and I just said I can sit in for longer, and it's just kind of happened. Then Maryland came up, and John I think did that the first year, and so he called and asked if I would sit in. And then I realized it was something somewhat of like it could be a bit of a profession, a bit of a side gig. When I was first doing it, I wasn't getting paid or anything. And and I shouldn't have been. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just talking. Uh so I just realized that it was more something I could take a little bit more seriously, and I got more involved with the production team at um Kentucky, and I ended up sitting in there for then all 3 phases as an analyst, as kind of sitting next to John. And it was last year when they decided we were just talking about, um, different roles, and last year they asked me to anchor the 4 long there, and that was the first time I would have been in that position, and so I had to do a lot more work to get prepared for that, and definitely was very nervous about it, but it came off okay. And through a series of events with Maryland this year, unfortunately, Spencer had some health things come up, and he wasn't able to come over, and so they were scrambling last moment, and it just made sense for me to anchor the 5-star. Um, so I honestly was a little hesitant at first, but the crew there I've worked with a lot. Jim Carr, the production company, is wonderful. Tim Singer, who's the director there, is amazing. I worked with him at Morven as well, and they felt confident, and their confidence I decided just to grab onto a little, and here we are. So yeah, it's been really wild.
It is so incredible, and you're so talented at it, and I vividly remember noting how much of a natural you were, even when you were the rider going in the booth for, like, an hour at a time or whatever it is, listening to the live stream. We were always kind of cluing in of like, "Oh, wow, Sinead is, like, really comfortable in this role kinda next to John Kyle," and it's just been really cool to kinda see it evolve into now this is one of your titles is kinda wearing that hat, so that's really cool. What's your process like? You mentioned kind of the preparations required and the little bit like the nerves and the stress associated with that. I mean, there's just so much information and you're constantly talking for the entire time these riders are going. How do you manage that? Like, what's your process for that?
Well, part of it really is just doing it a lot so that things that are happening don't surprise you. So, for example, you've got your headset on and you've got the production crew running everything, nowhere near you. They're in another, at Maryland, they're a 5-minute walk away in a whole compound. Um, at Kentucky, they're in a big van next to us, with like 30 TVs and connected all. So we're always somewhere else, but you've got normally them in your ear. So they will basically tell you when something's coming. And there's a lot of lingo that can kind of be confusing if you don't know what's going on. I was so fortunate that I knew that I got to sit next to John Kyle, who was just such a professional. So I never had to worry that much because he would always take the lead and he could push me in a direction or shut me up just by elbowing me if I was going some the wrong way, or he was really good if I was making a mistake or if I said something to tell me without saying it, in a way that was intimidating. Um, but so the process one of the most natural things is really the chemistry between the 2 people in the box. I think that's really, really important. I think we've all listened to people that maybe aren't reading each other's cues always the same time, and that's not because somebody's good at it or bad at it, it's often because they just don't know each other very well. And so I find that now I've worked with Frankie a lot. That was really great working with John Holling because we had, we've been friends for a while. So when we got in there, we were really comfortable in that dynamic. Spencer, John, Kyle as well. So that dynamic is really important. Then understanding the individual roles. So if you're coming in as an analyst, it really is your job to know everything from the penalties to the dressage test to something about the ground jury members to the like going around talking to the course designer. Like I had drinks with Pierre on Wednesday to get the insight, talking to the riders, like really because you're painting, you're making a story for people that can't be there. So you want to talk about the sights, the sounds, the talk behind the scenes, all of that sort of stuff, and have a general insight that's not necessarily my personal opinion, but grasping other people's opinion. I have enough of a, I can be enough of, I know enough that I can translate if kind of the vibe, if that makes sense. But that would be my role there. So I normally talk to whoever I'm working with, like Annie Bishop and I get along really well. Although we've known each other forever, but last week at Morven was the first time we worked together. And we had start lists and basically went through and we had a shared document and we have everything from like little bits of shared information that she might know or I might know. So we're not double doing work. And FEI data sheet, so I know all the results. If something, and I'll normally graze through that early and see if there's anything interesting. But I normally have that with me in the booth, so I can pull up results really quickly. We also a lot of these events work with Echo Rating, so they give us a ton of information. So Derm is almost always on. We have a group message with him, so he's always sending and Nicole sending things through to us, stats that we need to know right after the day of show or dressage is done. We get all a new stat sheet ready for the next day to go. So it's more you have to do it enough that you know how to get to information quickly and how much research you need to make small some like a lot of times I'll spend a lot of time in the weeks leading up to it. If I don't know somebody, that's I'll go to their website and I'll read their story or I'll find their Facebook page or I'll find some press clipping about them. So I feel like normally I'll find something about somebody that's different or interesting. A lot of the people that I know or the stories that I know, that's easy. I don't have to research that because I know it. and, but then often if I know it, most likely so do you. So I'm trying to find something that's a little bit different, if that makes sense. So the lead up to it is really depending on who you're working with and sharing some of that data together. John does so much of his own research. Like I just know my job is to come knowing kind of the color, like a lot of things that people wouldn't know, and to research the tests. So I really will know the dressage test, and I'll spend a lot of time walking cross country and walking with normally the course designer. I go out and I'll talk to like Michelle Valancourt this weekend. I went and talked to Michelle Valancourt, walked with him, know what his thoughts are behind the show jumping. So I have those bits of information. And then I will say what's taken me a long time, but now I'm getting way more comfortable with it is being able, there's a certain amount of preparedness you can have, but there's also a certain amount of rawness and it's live and things that are happening where somebody will be in your ear and they're just in 10 seconds, you're going on, and I need you to tell us about the weather, tell us about the day, give us a 3, 2, 1. What happened yesterday? You're gonna see a graphic, talk about that, and you're talking while they're talking in your ear. um, so the more I've done it and the more I understand the language, I don't get caught off guard by it. Like I know when I need to shut up very, very quickly. And I know when I can keep talking for 20 seconds and close it out organically, but they're letting me know we're cutting off in 20 seconds. And that's just in one word that they say in your ear. So it's kind of that can be a little jarring because you can't really prepare, if you know what I'm saying. Like you just
Yeah.
have to know what's in front of you and be very present. And also have like have a little cheat sheet at this point where I know if there's dead air, 2 or 3 quick things I can talk about to just fill the space. Like if it's taking an extra 5 seconds to get a graphic up, but I know a graphic is coming, but I can't talk about something, I'll know how to fill that space without it being dead air. And so those things you just kind of figure out along the way by there being awkward dead air and you sitting there going, "Well, that was weird. I don't want that to happen again." Like, um,
Absolutely.
so and the guys, they have a lot going on. Like the guys in the booth have a lot going on. They're like running 20 cameras. They're trying to figure out what's coming next. So it's not like they're like, "Will you please do this?" They're like, "Do it now." Like lay out now, And
Yeah.
but they're great. So that part has taken me a little bit to just not let my flow be interrupted, but also know what's coming. Like I should have an idea. Like in the morning, that you get a piece of paper that's down to 30-second, 15-second increments. Like billboards are going to come up. So those are your ad sponsors. And you either talk over those, like you either pre-record them or you have a piece of paper in front of you when it'll say Yeti, you know, something, whatever their thing is, and you read those billboards. So you know that'll take 15 seconds. And then your opening will normally take about 20 seconds. Everybody's unique in their opening. I found that the most stressful. If you have any questions, interrupt me because I'm rambling.
No, I love
Um,
this.
so that was the part that was the most nerve-wracking for me because the guys that I sit with are so good. So they count you down. Like there's the thing that comes on, it's like music's going, the scene opens, and then in your ear they go and go. And so in that moment, you're like, and welcome to day 2 of Mars, Maryland, 5-star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown's Advisory. It was all happening yesterday out in the cross country, but today we're here to jump the colored poles. And it has to sound like so easy, right? But you get I and John will just go, and you're like, and he'll have like facts in his head from the like history of 1978. This happened here, and he gets all this shit thrown into 20 seconds, just out of the top of his head. And I'm like, how did you just do that? And then they'll go into, here are your standings and this is what happened yesterday and this is your 3, 2, 1. So they'll have a clip of, Boyd and then doing some dressage and then it goes into your second place of Jenny and it goes into your first place and you just have to talk over it. And it just happens so fast. But like John would just do it off the top of his head, so the first time I did it, I tried to do it off the top of my head, but I didn't. I mean, like I was like practicing in the shower. I was like drive by myself places. I'd listen to like Nicole at Bookalo, or I'd listen to John somewhere else, and I'd listen to these intros, and then I'd be trying to sound like John, and I don't sound like John, and I'm like, welcome to whatever, and then I just get so stuck. I'm like, this is so stupid, and why am I even doing this? And so eventually, what I ended up doing is that okay, so at Maryland, for example, we're sitting facing the screens in front of us. The dressage ring is behind us, the show jumping arena. But you can only talk to the screen, right? Because I can only talk to what you're watching. So if I see something happening in front of me, I can't speak to that. If I see the score coming up, I can't say it until it's on the screen. So when the opening comes up, it's just graphics, right? Like you don't really think about this when you're watching it, but you're seeing the order of go, you're seeing a shot of the head of the lake or whatever, and you hear John talking or you hear me talking. I'm actually looking at the screen as well. So I realized I could actually write down my opening, right? But the problem is that then you have to go on screen really quick. Well, at Kentucky, the camera in the booth is in that same direction, so you just can be reading something over here and then put it down. Maryland, the camera's behind us for some reason. So you have to turn around in your chair. So you'll get like a 5-second like get ready for on and you have to I'm reading my computer, which is here, and I'm going and if I don't have the timing right, then I am lost in the last 2 seconds turning around with whoever's in the booth with me to interview them, which happened on the last day I was with Ian, and I had, like, 2 paragraphs written out, and then right before he said, "Okay, we're on in 10. I need you to actually turn around to the camera now," and I'm like, I don't my gut and I held my computer for the first 10 seconds, and then I just slammed it shut when he gave me the and I just, like, talked at that point. Thankfully, I'd been in there for 4 days, so I was on autopilot, but, um, so that part took the longest for me to just decide, "Okay, I'm just gonna prepare for as much as I could prepare for, and then I'm gonna go through and write some different scenarios." So I did this weekend, so I felt like on I can't remember which day, I made some mistakes, right? I called some things not quite right. I was recalling them from memory and I made some mistakes and I also what else did I do that was wrong? Um I said I you're supposed to not speak in too many tenses because they redo the shows and they'll redo it like I'm talking about something and I'm overlaying, like, maybe after the fact, they are showing something, a 3, 2, 1, and I'm supposed to talk through it and they record it. But if I say, "And in the ring today," or "In the ring yesterday," they can't use it again because you gotta stay away from tenses, which is kind of confusing to think about in the certain words that you say. So I made some mistakes and I was really kind of, like, I'm not upset about it, but I was just playing in my head too much, and I just felt like it was in the moments where things were really live, and so I'm like, "I don't know how I can prepare for that better," but what I did was I went and I wrote down all the actual mistakes that I made, which at the end of the day, in 8 hours, there were 3, and 2 of them probably nobody noticed, but I noticed, and so I wrote down those mistakes and then I made general rules around them so that if I don't know something 100%, just don't use it. Like, even if I think it's interesting and I think I'm 85% right, if I'm wrong, not everybody will notice, but the people that own that horse will know. The person that rides that horse will know. If it's somebody from a different country, everybody in that country will know and they'll tell me. So if like I'm not sure how to pronounce a name, I either find somebody really quick to phonetically spell it to me and send it to me, or if I'm pretty sure that somebody was like second at badminton, but I don't know, I just don't say it. Like don't say it, even if you think it's and I've made, you just it's not worth saying. Even if you think you're super clever for remembering, if you remember it wrong, then that's not worth it. And then I just started writing out my 3, 2, 1, so I got better at saying them. So that you kind of have to do you on dressage day, you don't have enough time to write it down because it's just happened. They create the thing really quickly and it comes up. But I knew if I started to write out how to do it and mock ones, so I just make up like this person's third place, this second, this first, and I just make it up and I'd write 4 sentences that would maybe take me 15 seconds to say. And then I just practicing that so I could get into the rhythm of it. And that actually helped me enormously. Um, because I just before the 3, 2, 1s would catch me off guard because that was never my job, it's the anchor's job, so I never had to do it. And, um, and because I think I had worked with John and just seen everything so effortlessly, it's kinda like when you watch somebody ride your horse and they're really good and you're like, "Well, I can do that," and then you get on and you can't do it.
Yeah.
You're like, "Whoa," and you
Yeah.
notice so many more nuances about it, and so I just tried to really get as prepared as possible and also be prepared with dead space. What am I going to talk about when there is dead space? What am I going to talk about if a graphic goes away? Like, what am I going to talk about if there's a hold on course? I know this person's coming into the booth with me. If something's weird and I'm having to do something over here, what are 3 questions I can ask them so that they can just roll with it? And I will say, Kinsey, like doing this podcast has helped me so much because I would have never been able to read the way that I can read because now since doing the intros, like, I write them and read them,
Mhm.
and I think you'll probably remember, or Jessa will definitely. I think the first time I read it, it took me 8 takes to read my own writing without stumbling or rushing or writing it in a way that I wouldn't say it, that doesn't come natural for me. And now it maybe takes me 2 takes, and it's more just because I get distracted. Or I spell something wrong and I like read it and I don't even can't even understand what I wrote. And so being able to read that really helped me a lot here, and then the questions, so when you're with somebody that's coming in, like, having a truly interested sense in what they're bringing to the table or what's interesting, and that has also helpful in going out on the field of play and getting information. And what I've also realized, and this is also coming through the podcast as well, is people are so willing to talk to you when you have interesting questions. Like
Totally.
I'm like amazed, like there were a few times this week where I didn't even notice until I was halfway through the conversation, and I'm, like, standing there for 20 minutes talking to Ian Stark, Michelle Valancourt, and, Chris Barnard, and we're just kind of shooting the shit at the corner of the arena, and it was a very easy, comfortable conversation because I was very curious about what their thoughts were and and then they're all so fun and nice and interesting. But, same thing with Pierre. Like, I was like, I don't even know if this person's going to talk to me. I asked him like 2 questions and he sat down and talked to me for an hour,
Yeah.
and so I think just realizing actually, and I think I've said this before to you, like when we started the podcast, is recognizing that it's not about me. It's about the show, or it's about the person, or it's about the course. Like, I'm getting all in my head because I'm worried I'm gonna say something wrong, but that's normally because I'm just thinking about me.
Yeah.
I need to be thinking about what I'm seeing, and being as authentic to that as possible. Um, and I think that takes the pressure off a little bit. And I'm fortunate that I've been in the sport long enough that that comes fairly easily, like, and I'm always learning so much when I'm watching, like, it's so interesting, and when you're talking to people and you get the feedback from the course designer, and then you go and ask, like, Pierre, and then you ask Ian, and then you ask, somebody that's going out and riding it, you'll get kind of this tangle, different stuff, and it's just so cool to then watch people ride it and see how it works out, and just to add that perspective on the stream is really fun. And like I've made plenty of mistakes doing it, but I mean, it's a great way to figure out like what you did and how not to do it again. Like,
Yeah, I mean, when you're on
so
air for that many hours a day, it's impossible to not be making some mistakes. Making 3
yeah.
mistakes in 8 hours, it seems like an impossible feat. So, that's incredible,
Yeah.
Sinead.
Yeah.
Um, as you talked through with some of the people, like the course designers and the riders leading up to this show this past weekend, both
Mhm.
in the 3-star and the 5-star, what was the sentiment that you were getting? Like, what were the conclusions that you were drawing leading up to the weekend? How were you kinda thinking things were gonna shake out?
Well, I think there was a lot of in the beginning of the week and leading up, I think there's a lot of anticipation and probably a little nervousness. Last year didn't go great. The numbers aren't high. They were more than last year, but the numbers aren't high, and the field I think was really good. The numbers were high in the 3-star, but the 5-star the numbers were lower. Although I thought the field was stronger than last year. To be honest, I thought there were some really good cross country horses.
Am I right that
That
there were
makes sense.
22 5-star
Yeah,
pairs?
I think we originally had 25,
Okay.
and then I think we ended up with 22, um, for whatever reason.
How
But
does that compare to, like, Kentucky, do you know?
oh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot at Kentucky. I mean,
Like
I mean,
60?
that 50, 60,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
mhm.
So it is quite
Um,
different. The participants, were they primarily American, or was it a pretty good split between
no, I mean, they're over the 2 classes, there's 7 different nations, but that's including people that are based here and people that are we
Got
did
it.
have, one girl, Sophia Hill, she came all the way from Australia, and then we only had Alex Bragg from Great Britain, and then we had Janelle Price, who's Kiwi, but based in England, she came over, and Taylor Masterson, I think her name is, Mason? Can't remember. I'm not on live stream right now, so I would have just said Taylor, if I didn't know, but she is a Kiwi, but based in England. She came over. Um, but we didn't have a huge amount of people fly over. And I think a little bit of that was the cost of shipping was like a lot more this year. I think last moment they got some grants put together um, to make it work. for people. I think Taylor last minute moment came over. I think she crowdsourced money to come and then obviously had to contribute herself. But I think it was like originally, maybe last year, horses could get over for around 15 grand. And I think this year they were looking close to 22, 23 to fly
Wow.
over, which just makes it, kind of
Yeah.
bananas. Um, and a new course designer. So not really sure. I mean, I think Pierre has a very good reputation, but um, still, I think new. So I think people not quite knowing what they were getting into.
Yeah, so Pierre Lagoupil is I'm pronouncing
Mhm,
that right? He was the course designer this year.
mhm.
What were people feeling about the course ahead of time? And then yeah, what were they thinking about ahead of time? And then we can get into kind of what ended up
I
happening.
think everybody on Wednesday was like, "Oh my god," because the rumors actually were that it was gonna be softer, because last year was so hard.
Mhm.
And I think everybody walked it on Wednesday and was like, this is not softer." That this and the coffin was the major concern. Yeah, I think people were really, um, thought it was pretty intense, and
Was it intense in the sense that it was big, that it was like technical, that it was
but
really
it wasn't
stamina
it's not
demanding?
as was that, stamina-wise, yeah, there's a huge hill there, like, basically, Burley and Maryland are the hardest 5 stars in the world with regards to fitness and stamina, like, that's where a lot of horses got caught out last year, and I think people knew a little, better maybe this year, but, um and I think Ian has just some big bloody fences, like, I don't think the fences were as big, but they were very technical and tricky, like and you know what it was too, Kinsey, is it's a new designer, right? So, he designs very French. It looks different. Like, we're
Mhm.
very used to looking at courses that Ian and Derek build, which are bigger, but like brush and I don't know, they just have a different look to them. Pierre is very artsy. Some of the lines, you're like, I don't even know if this is the line. Like some of the jumps were stuff like I think even Monica said it in one of her interviews. She's like, I've never seen a jump like this before. Like, I don't even know what they're going to do. And in speaking to Pierre, oh my god. He was like so this coffin jump, okay, so you go down this huge rails, like max rails coming straight down a hill. And then I think it was a stride over a ditch and then 2 or 3 strides over this like I don't even know how to describe this jump. It's like a skinny on an angle, but there's a rail on the top and there's this soft brush up top and then a huge gap. It would be like looking at just a vertical hanging rail with nothing in between. And then kind of this rock base. And then you went and then on landing, like, it looked like you were actually gonna land 10 feet down. Like, everybody thought, like, "You're not gonna rotate over this jump, you're gonna, like, somersault when you land." Like and then you go down the hill, and it's, like, 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever to another one of the a similar jump on this angle. And we're walking this, and we're just like, "Oh, I don't even get it." And, I'm sitting with Pierre and he's, "What do you think? Blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Well, could we talk about that coffin?" Like, in not a weird way, but what were you thinking? Like, and so he tells me, he's so French and he's telling me about how he's that these horses have a sixth sense when it comes to this brush and he remembers galloping as a child on the beaches in France, like in Normandy, France, as we all do, and up these huge sand berms and there's these big grasses at the top of the berms and the horses would gallop up to the top and then they'd wide-eyed at the top and then they just roll through the brush and it was just beautiful and they understood it. And I was like, was that what the coffin is? Or Pierre's puzzle. We're not supposed to say coffin anymore. Pierre's puzzle. Is that what that is? And he was so adamant that the horses would just roll through this brush, like this beautiful French thing. And I was like, you are not correct. And
You are
he was he was so correct. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, Boyd's horse didn't get it, like, Boyd's horse, Luke just didn't he did a little bit what maybe we thought. He got there in 2.5 strides, got a little confused at the top, and he's a very careful horse and was not gonna roll through the brush of Normandy Beach, and, but I mean, Caroline went through on that first horse. She did it 3 times on 3 different horses the direct way, and they just took a little hesitation at the top, and then they just softly rolled over it. I mean, it was, like, super, super impressive. So, like, this is a huge, long road around what your original question was, but basically, I think people, first of all, thought it was gonna be softer, then walked it on Wednesday and thought, "Dear Lord," and then I will say I walked it with a couple of the selectors, and we all thought it it is a lot of it looks super impressive and technical, but it is on like, the numbers are there, you kind of felt like it was technical, but you would have a plan, like, we felt like everybody would have a plan by Friday night, which is a good thing, but it wasn't a course that you walked up to, like, there's sometimes at Kentucky that you walk, and the first walk, I'll just go, "I'm gonna come back to that," because there's so many different ways to do that. I'm not gonna get hung up in it right now. I'll, like, narrow my plan down as we walk, and it kind of felt like maybe up at the Crab Water, there was a little bit of chat around different ways to do it, but it really felt even the first walk, you could kinda see what the question was, even if you didn't like it or thought it was not doable, you could see what the question was. Whereas I sometimes think I remember walking the coffin with Ian last year, Stark, who designed it last year, and I was trying to get a number out, and he's not a numbers guy, and he was like, "It's 2 or 3 or it's whatever." They jump up here, they pat the ground, and they go, and then, you'll have instincts to that, and, you kinda think, "Well, let's fall back on that, but can we
Yeah.
have a plan A?" Um
Yeah. Like a right way to do this?
Yeah, and, I mean, then Ian is a genius, and you know, you again, same thing, you have a plan by the time you're going out, but it did feel like the questions were there in front of you. And you know, look, again, when you have small numbers, the stats are never gonna look great afterwards, but there's a huge jump between 4 and 5-star. Like it's massive. And that is because of the technicality of the fences, the height of the fences, the endurance, uh, physically and mentally, right? For the horses and the riders. So there's less time of, like, galloping let up fences. The technical questions might have 1 or 2 more questions on them, or they're slightly bigger, so they have a bigger brush or a bigger ditch or a bigger, like, more attacking question. And I think that's where you see horses that maybe are so successful at the 4-star level and are incredible jumpers and brave and blah, 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 and they'll get to a 5-star sometimes, and they'll just think, "This is just one more a jump I don't know if I wanna do." And sometimes the horses get around and you kind of as a rider finish and think, "That's maybe one more thing than I wanted to do." It felt like a lot.
Mhm.
And when you watched horses jump around Maryland, the ones that were just really made it look easy were the thoroughbreds, were the ones that have the endurance. They don't have the extravagant jump, right? So they're not jumping every brush jump because there's a lot of brush in the beginning. So they're not over jumping the first 10 fences because they're getting up in the air so high. Um, and they're trusting the line and trusting the rider, not bouncing all over the place and over jumping this and, like mentally and physically exhausting themselves by the end of the track. So, um, and I think that's a lot of the conversations we've had about, buying horses for championships instead of 5-star horses coming out. I think it's an interesting I don't think it's actually as, depressing as the vibe seems right now. Like, people are like, "Oh my god, what if we lose the 5 stars?" I think it's a healthy question, but I think I think there is a difference between horses that can be very successful, 4-star and championship horses, and there's a few amazing ones that can do both, like, HSH Blake, like, he's only 10 years old, like, we feel like he's been around forever because he has been at an international level, but he's a blood horse that's good enough to be a championship horse, like, he's very good on the 3rd day. You have, like, Monica's horse who is so incredible, but the show jumping is hard.
Mhm.
Even Felix Vogg's horse, I mean, he very easily could have had the last 2 rails down, and that's the first clear jumping that horse has had at 5-star. He had
Wow.
2 down, I think, again, if I was live, I wouldn't be saying it, I'd have it in front of me, but I wanna say he had 2 down at Burley and 3 down at Badminton or something like that, like,
Wow.
he's had clears at shorts, like, when you do the show jumping first, but he's really worked on the show jumping, and he was in that all-weather footing, but, I mean, he really rubbed the last 2 fences. You know, you have Phelps that came in and just bless him, like, it's no, it's he doesn't have the jumper, you know, he's not he jumps well, but he's just not careful enough in that phase. It's not like he's a bad jumper. He can tap a pole and he's fine with it. It's just not the end of the world for him. Which is why he's so phenomenal in the cross country is because he's just a laid back guy. He doesn't take
Yeah.
things too seriously. And so is Mia. You know, Mia's pretty laid back. Not that she doesn't take it seriously, and I think she had a very hard weekend. Like I think it was a tough weekend for her. But you know, who else was in there? You know, and then Boyd, man, Boyd had to ride the pants off that horse on cross country commando because it is a jumper. Like it's done 2 5 stars. It's done very well. But you know, it was probably one of the 5 stars I've seen him have to work really, really hard. Um,
Interesting.
and his horse jumped beautifully on the last day. But I mean, he was working his tail end off and had to take 2 long routes, I think, because he didn't go on the like, didn't do the Pierre's puzzle on his 2nd horse, and I think he went long at the water as well. Um, so, yeah, it was really, really interesting.
Yeah. It is, just yeah, it's wild how these different horses read these questions and how perception and expectations always are so different on the
Mhm,
Wednesday before the event and then afterwards, like, doing
mhm.
the recap like this, it's like, wow, things really turned out differently than we expected. Um,
Yeah.
if you look back on the five-star dressage, were there any pairs that particularly impressed you that were standouts for you?
Well, I mean, Monica's horse is 14 and looks stronger and better than ever. I mean, he has always been nice on the flat. He's at 3 good paces and been very polite, but he hasn't had the suspension. I think that's where what you don't see often in the thoroughbred, so the time in the air, like the slower swing speed and having a little height. And he looked amazing. Like it's the first time I've really seen him spend time in the gates. And so it was just cool to see him getting really strong. I think she just rode, I mean, she deserved that 23 or whatever she got. It was really, really incredible. I think there was just, yeah, there was some really, really beautiful dressage. I think Jenny Branigan had one of the best tests I've ever seen her have, which was so great because she's had such a hard time. I mean, her leg, I mean, she's just walking around in a cast all weekend, you know, like, she broke
Oh,
her
man.
ankle the week before,
Oh my
or chipped her,
gosh.
yeah, she had a horse a flip over at the start box at the Open, and she didn't even get out of the box, like, and she chipped something on her ankle, so she was meant to have 2 horses there at Kentucky. She ended up just taking Foxy. You know, Foxy last year he had that early run out at Kentucky, so then she pulled him up and put him on a plane and, sent him to Badminton, and then he had a trailer
Mhm.
accident, right before he got there, and it
What?
wasn't able to compete, so ended up having to fly the horse home, and then she's had a couple of real big falls lately. She's hit her head a couple times, so she's kinda had to sit out a bit, and
Oh my
then at
gosh.
Morven, she had that happen, and she was so I mean, I mean, you'll hear I was pretty much when she came through the finish on Saturday was such an amazing round. We were all crying. Like she was crying and she was kind of having this. She said it on the interview. She was like, I just was sitting up at night thinking, is this God or someone telling me I'm not supposed to be doing this sport? You know, like what is going off? Just one of those real like when all these things are going wrong, you really have
Yeah.
to start looking in instead of looking out, right? And then she just I don't know what she did between Morven and Fairhill, but she just was so composed and the dressage test was so beautiful. And she had the round of the day cross country. Like it was her and Foxy. I mean, it's what we know they're capable of, but it was just flawless. And then she had the first rail in show jumping. Um which, you know, whatever, she had a really great weekend, and it was very disappointing that she had that first rail but it wouldn't have made a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
I think she was 5th and maybe she would've ended up 4th, but, uh, yeah, that was a really great weekend for her, so that was cool to see. Um,
What a story. Oh
yeah, it
my
was wild.
goodness.
It was wild. You know, and then like, on the other end of the thing, to speak frankly, um you know, the girl that came over, Sophia, that came over on her thoroughbred from Australia, I mean, she had I mean, honestly, it was a disaster of a dressage test. I mean, I think she did a 46. And looking at her scores, I mean, they weren't, and I was sitting there thinking, why in God's name did you fly this horse all the way over here? And then, oh my God, watching it jump was unbelievable. It was just it was so fast and it was so brave, and it was going so fast on the cross country, I couldn't totally tell. I could tell it was a good jumper, and I could tell he was clever, and I could tell they were a partnership, like, they were so trusting in each other, and then he came into the show jumping, and Kinsey, I was like, "This is how people used to go to the Olympics for show jumping on thoroughbreds." I mean, the horse is unbelievable. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, and just jumping for fun. I mean, just so again, that's like a five-star horse, right? You're gonna lay down a score in the dressage and you hope to keep it under control enough to stay in the ring. But then when you watch that horse jump around the cross country and then go jump the show jumping like that, you're like, I see why you're here. Like,
Yeah.
so I think, Kyle wrote an interesting article, about kind of the horsemanship side of the five-star level and having that be really important. And I think it is. And I think when you watch it done with the horses that are meant to do it, it's so inspiring. And then I think it puts a big responsibility on people to really make sure. I think Maryland is now getting more of its personality. I don't think Maryland has known who Maryland was. Whereas you can make decisions about badminton, Burley and Kentucky, Poe, Lemulin, because those courses are so established. So you can
Yeah.
say, I'm never taking this horse to badminton. It's definitely a Burley horse or blah blah blah, whatever. A lot of horses are going to Poe that necessarily wouldn't have the wins because it's very flat.
Mhm.
Um, so Maryland is starting to get its own personalities, so I think people can make better decisions about horses that they think will suit the course, because I think it's not a Kentucky, it's harder than Kentucky, and that's very important, to know and to start to know where and it's hard to say because until you've taken a horse to a five-star, you just don't know, especially if you've had very successful four stars. I think that's where things are tricky now because we have horses that jump so well and are so brave and they're fit and they're jumping around the four stars great, and then you get to this five-star and you just think it's gonna be fine, and then the cumulative effect just shows up, and you wouldn't know.
Were there any
Um,
first-time pairs this weekend?
um, yes, Allison and Van Dyke, um, and that did not she ended up pulling up, and all of Caroline's, but Caroline is not. I think she's the one horse I think started maybe the cross country at Kentucky, but then did
Got
not
it.
finish. Um, not Yeah, because Blake did the four-star at Kentucky. Um, so hers but those horses are so experienced, and they're very thoroughbredy, like, I mean, I think they are thoroughbreds. I mean, HSH Blake isn't, but
Very thoroughbody.
the the mare is, I believe, and the Tolan King, I think, is Irish and a lot of thoroughbred. Um, and they're very fast horses, anyway, so, yeah. It's just hard.
So when
5
you
stars hard.
say it yeah, that I mean, honestly, that's the main takeaway from
Yeah,
all of these 5 stars.
yeah.
It's just like
Mhm.
every time we do a recap, I'm like, that was so hard. That was
Yeah,
really hard."
yeah.
Um, so you're talking about kind of the personality of these 5 stars around the world, and what would you say I mean, Marilyn's personality, what I'm hearing from you is that it's hard. Is there anything else that you're kind of would be
You
your
have to
thought
have a
around
horse
it?
that's a little bit bottomless for fitness sense, like, it's really the hill at the back is really impressive, so I think they have to be if you're finishing your 4 stars and you're feeling like the last minute's a little, "Meh," maybe don't go to Maryland. You
Yeah,
know?
okay.
Like you wanna feel that the horse is ready to jump another few minutes maybe after they finish a 4 long. And, I also think it needs to be a very, efficient a polite horse because I do think that the technical stuff is really Like, you wanna have a horse that listens, that comes down the hill and you can set them up for that big upright rail and then turn and put something in front of them, and they can handle it mentally. Not just jump it because it's in front of them, but frantically do it, but, like, they can handle it mentally, like, they have a certain, rideability and level to them mentally that they can handle something in front and this sounds like anything that would be normal for any five-star horse, but, like Burley, the horses can be a little bit rude, honestly. It's a big, bold, burly track, so you can have them dragging you down there at times, and there's big questions, but they're big technical attacking questions, whereas, um, I think you like the horses that made it look smooth and good were very trained, very rideable horses, to be honest. Yeah, so I think they've gotta be rideable. I think they've gotta be very, very fit, um, and have a character that can stay thoughtful, like, that you don't wanna be jumping the first 3 fences feeling like the horse is, like, trying to figure out how to do it, like,
Yeah.
that they're just, it's easy. It's easy work until something's a little hard, you wanna feel like a lot of it's easy work, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, Swiss rider Felix Vogue and Cartania took home the win for the weekend in the 5-star.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about their weekend? Kinda what were they like from start to finish?
Yeah, so he kinda said from the get said quite an experienced horse at the five-star level. He said that they've decided it's not really a championships horse for whatever reason. I would imagine that's probably for the show jumping. I mean, he did a really nice dressage test. I think he was on a 28, but she's lovely. I mean, she is very, very blood. But I think he just hung in there with the dressage test that was close enough and, kept knocking on the door. He didn't add anything in the cross country. I think there were 4 clear cross countries. He did have kind of the save of the day. He rode, I would say, just honestly too fast at the second water, and she really had to sort it out. But then he was much more organized at the next one, and and then you could tell he had done a lot of work in the show jumping. I can't remember what it looked like. She had some type of hack-a-bit contraption, maybe. I have to go back and look at it, but it looked like he had something sorted out so that there was definitely some nose pressure, like, she's a long horse, and I think probably she's scopy, but she's an eventing horse. I mean, I think even Janelle said that about her horse when she finished. She said, "He's a good jumper, but he's an eventing jumper. He's not." And that's, I think, what, you know, at least at Maryland, that's kind of what you need to you wanna have, again, a very rideable horse and a rider that spends a lot of time working on the show jumping and getting the horses in a package and to good distances so that they have the best chance of jumping it clean because, you know, you didn't see a lot of horses other than Boyd's horse going in and where you just could look away and think, "Oh, yeah, they're just gonna jump, no problem." I mean, we were kind of on the edge of our seats for all of it because they needed to be accurate. The horses need to really be rideable. The riders really needed to put the horses in the best balance and best package so that the weariness of the day before was not there. And then they had to have some luck. Like Jenny ran out of luck. Didn't like her. She just it was unlucky the first rail. And then Felix was really lucky in the last 2, like,
Yeah.
um, you know, Monica, from what I can remember, just got down a line that was, and it was about a foot short. It walked about a foot short, and her horse is just big and long, and she just couldn't get him back. Um, so I think Felix just stayed in there and felt that he would have a good chance knowing that Monica's horse could have the poles down, but he also knew his horses could have the poles down.
Yeah, it was
Um,
anybody's win.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
unfortunately, we were all wishing that Phelps would somehow magically, but he's just at the least going to have to on that day. And a very casual, boring too. He's jumping great. He's going easy. He's just jumping the way that he jumps, and
Yeah.
just taps it just the wrong way.
Yeah.
So
And then in the 3-star, Isabel Bosley, if I'm have this correct, she was winning from dressage through the rest of
hmm
the weekend, is that right?
hmm
And then
yeah,
what were they like? What was that pair? What were your
they were
takeaways?
awesome. The 3-star was awesome. Those girls were great. Like the top kind of 4 girls were just awesome. It was cool to see. Leslie Law is pretty crafty. And he several years ago when he took on this developing job, for this, developing tours and whatever, he really pushed to get money for these grants for these girls to go overseas. And not just girls, so like boys too can go overseas. But these developing riders to spend time in Europe, to see where the bar was, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that was 4 or 5 years ago. And Olivia has gone twice overseas. Alyssa has gone, I think, 2 or 3 times. Isabel actually went and rode at a Nations Cup. It didn't go well for her over there, but that was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And Mia Farley, who, unfortunately had to pull down in the show jumping, but she was right up there. She was, like, in 4th. Like, all the work that's gone in is showing up. These girls didn't they all rode. Olivia, Isabel, Mia, Alyssa, they rode seamlessly seamlessly through the weekend. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody in there because there were a lot. Oh, Maddie Tempkin, I think she finished 7th. Um, their dressage was so professional. Their cross country was fast and smooth and beautiful. Their show jumping rides were professional and beautifully ridden. Like, they looked better than a lot of places that I've been. Like, you just couldn't pick it right, and you just thought, "That's really exciting." It was really good. I was so pleased for Isabel. I think she works really, really hard. It's a cracking course. Like, it is really nice. Um, and Alyssa was 2nd on a horse she just got in January, and again, I mean, they just looked amazing together. Olivia Dutton was so good, and they've all been competing against each other, so they all know, and they've all been riding with Leslie, and Leslie and Philip, they have but Leslie's just really putting an emphasis on, like, you have to practice going fast and you have to practice being competitive. So all of them went out there and knew that the other one was gonna go fast, and it just made the other ones go fast, and it was just, and they're all great friends, like, they were all, so happy for each other. But it was really cool to see. It was, like, awesome sportsmanship, super competitive, and yeah, I thought it was awesome. I was really, really pleased for Isabel. I think she worked for Lillian Hurd for, I think, 8 years, and now has been over with Philip riding for maybe 2 years over there, 1 or 2 years, and her parents trained racehorses. She gallops racehorses right there in Pennsylvania, so it's really cool. It's really neat.
Yeah, I love just hearing about the strong outcome for those, like, up and coming American riders, in the 3-star and just, yeah, how like, you from the sounds of it, they all were just, like, class acts, like, it just, like, they're exactly what you want the future of the sport to be, because they
There was
seem to
nothing there was nothing lucky about it. Like,
yeah, it was talent. It was
yeah, like, you sometimes see good riders on a great horse, or, like, especially with the younger generations, but these are great horses with great riders. Like, it's, like, really on par. It was really cool.
yeah, that's exactly what you love to see. So as you think about I mean, you probably watched more of this weekend than anybody just because, I mean, you were
I did.
commenting on it and yeah, you really got the front row seats to the whole weekend. As I'm sure it's impossible for you to watch all that and walk all those courses without thinking about riding it yourself.
Mm, mhm.
Um, how what kind of what kind of thoughts or like kind of your perspective as a rider as you walked the cross country course for the 5-star and the show jumping course for the 5-star? What kind of thoughts were you having? Like, what moments were you thinking like, "Oh, this would have been a challenging moment for me as a rider?"
I just honestly, my takeaway is just the horse that you have, the relationship just has to be so good. The horse has to be so good anyway, like the instincts, the athleticism, and the partnership. Like, that's all I was thinking is that, this stuff looks impossible.
Yeah.
And then you see some of these partnerships go through it and they're just, I mean, it sounds stupid, but they're just doing the same thing, thinking the same thing in the same time, and it looks so seamless. And like, that's the way you want to do that stuff. Like, if you are having big training horses is all about conversations, right? It's a back and forth. It's a teacher and a student, or a leader and a student. Like, it's a back and forth. Like, the horse is going to give feedback, and their feedback is very, very important. But you kind of know where the road's going, so you've got to say, "This is the language we need to develop." But your feedback is very important. So there's all these conversations. But by the time you're going 5-star, you want to be able to like think something and the horse thinks it. There's no like, I think we should do this. What do you think? It's like we are both doing this. Like we are looking at the same thing and we are feeling and doing the same thing. Like there's not time for negotiation. But it has to be a willing partnership. Like 5-star again, it can't have been we're not having a negotiation because I'm scared of you, right? Or we're not having a negotiation because you're gonna do it all. It's like we are looking at this thing and we are solving it and we're doing it together and we don't even have to talk, right? Like I would imagine when people go, it's a weird comparison, but like when people went to war and they're in these fields of battle, they are so trained that they just act in a certain way and they do things and they execute in a certain way. Like when people are flying planes and like there's not that level of it just has to feel like that. And that needs to be always what you're working towards with the horses is that you're building a language that then is not a spoken word and it's not a back and forth conversation. It is just like a felt sense of being in the same space doing the thing that's in front of you. And that's like you got to have that to go to the 5-star. In the only way you can not have that is if you're so good, like you have 6, 7, 8 advanced horses, and the horse that you're riding is so good that you actually almost don't even realize you're educating that horse. Like Janelle Price, like that was her round. She's so good, and the horse is so athletic, but she didn't, she went long, and I think she had a 20 somewhere, but she gave that horse an educational ride around a 5-star, which is really hard to do. She's got 3 horses at Poe next week. She's got so much skill. So if you don't have that, you gotta have the other thing. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, yeah, as you look at these courses and just, like, the impossibility of getting around, that partnership becomes more and more necessary and
Yeah,
just, like, crucial
yeah.
to the outcome. And I think we all see that as, like, the sticky moments on course, the ones that turn out okay, it's a lot of it is due to that partnership.
Yeah,
That really
totally.
makes a lot of sense. Um, okay, so we're almost here on the hour. I mean, we basically are here on the hour. Sinead, I really, really appreciate you sharing about the weekend with us. And I mean, it's just so fun getting your perspective as a commentator and as a rider and as a coach. And like it's just like, yeah, you have kind of all the perspective now. And it's so valuable to us. And we really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm happy to do it. It's actually fun to have this was actually a fun and easy conversation. I wasn't sure what we were gonna talk about. But somehow when this
Yeah.
microphone comes out, we just start going. Let's talk
It
about
was
autopilot.
shockingly, it was fun and interesting.
Yeah, it's like you and I are used to these things being turned
Yeah,
on and just going.
almost. Yes, yes. Yes, it has become second nature, more so
Yeah.
for you than for me, but, we'll try to learn from you as much as we can. But everybody who submitted questions, we really appreciate it. Sinead, you are the best, and as always, everyone tune in to the In Stride podcast. It is the best equestrian podcast out there, in my unbiased opinion. And we'll tune into the next time you are broadcasting. When is the next time you're broadcasting?
I don't know. I might do something at Terra Nova, but I'm riding at Terra Nova, but I might help them out. And yeah, then Kentucky, I'm sure.
Amazing.
And then.
Something to look forward to. Awesome. Well, Sinead, we
Yeah.
appreciate you.